What's happening? Sorry for the delay. I like to start prompt, but had some technical difficulties. Pretty cool week. Was able to really get a lot done, and I got some really exciting news coming up pretty soon here in the next few days, and I'm really excited to share it with everybody. I gotta keep sort of lips sealed for a little bit. And then we'll announce it out. It's going to be some pretty big news. I'm really excited about it. Getting involved with a new endeavor. And so really just really like kind of relieved that this is all coming to fruition. So very excited about that. Today I have a very special guest. We met actually at a TACA event. Well, it was North Texas TACA chapter event. We met earlier she's involved with Women in HVACR, and really I got to sit through like a seminar of hers. I guess it was more of like an hour sort of info speech. It was really very educational. Colleen.
Hi. An info speech. Some people call it a presentation.
No. It was an info speech.
It was a different type of speech for sure than anything. It's a little bit more, I don't know. It's the subtle things about running a business that people don't talk about. It's the nuanced stuff. It's the behind the scenes things.
Hey, have you ever seen a sausage get made?
Yes. My husband's family runs a cattle farm, and yeah. Well,
that's like a play on words, right? Have you ever seen a sausage? I had taken a job, but my first job in the HVAC industry, I had one of the senior guys that was there. He said, "Hey, have you ever seen a sausage?" I asked him. I said, "What are you doing? You're so successful. What does your presentation look like? What do your load calcs look like? Like, I want to know everything. Like, how are you so successful? Blah blah blah." And he goes, "Have you ever seen a sausage get made?" And I had never heard that terminology before. I'd never heard that phrase before. And I was like, I don't think so. He's like, "Yeah, you don't want to." And that was my introduction into that phrase. But yeah, Colleen, we met, and you do a lot of stuff, and that's pretty bonkers. For people that don't know who you are, let's pretend nobody has any idea who you are. Like, who are you?
All right. So the elevator pitch, I guess my day job is I work at a company called Online Access. Online Access is a marketing company for the trades. It is grown out of my family's business, which we have our own HVAC and plumbing company. And it's all family on both sides of it. We've been working in this industry as far as online access for over 24 years. I have been involved with online access for the last 14. And 9 of those 14 years, I served on the board for Women in HVACR, and am recently retired off of that. And since retiring off the board of Women in HVACR, I became the president of INWIC, which is the International Network of Women in Cooling, large in part due to the success of Women in HVACR. And they use the blueprint of Women in HVACR and several other organizations for women to help build women's organizations in other countries that don't have the opportunity to have women in the trades organizations. So then I have traveled to 10 countries in the last 2 years, where previously I had only done Mexico, Canada, and the US, and like the islands in the Caribbean. And now I've done 10 countries where I've been kind of an ambassador for this, working through INWIC, and do my day job for Online Access and work with contractors and train at distributors and speak at different industry events. And I now serve on a couple different councils and boards, and as a consult for other software companies and stuff. So that's kind of all the fun stuff I do in my spare time.
So of the other countries that you've been to, like what's the most notable, or like where have you gone?
More recently, the most notable, because it's the most difficult I've had to get into, was Calcutta. So I just got back this last October. When you saw me, I had just gotten back like a week or so ago from Calcutta, India. And I didn't know I was going. It was my first year missing Pantheon for service site, so I was super sad. And it was during that same time. I was like, Calcutta, India, Pantheon, like, I just had to make that choice. And I didn't know, like, I was calling my friends and I was like, hey guys, I might need to crash at your room because I'm going to come to Pantheon if this doesn't go through. And because I give up my tickets and my room, and I didn't have my visa until 2 days before my flight left. And like, I got it cleared, and the UN EP, which is the United Nations Environmental Program, which is what heads up, or secretariats, if you will, initiative of INWIC, they paid, it was one of their events. So then they sponsored me to go over there, speak, and we helped, first off, launch INWIC's presence, of course, which is the network itself, but then help incorporate a women's group there in India. So women in ISHRAE. And it was really cool to see a whole other culture. It was really cool to go over there. But here's something that, like, nuanced stuff. Like, I talked to some of my friends about this. It's kind of hard. So every country I've been to, Europe, in the Caribbean, going over to, different places, obviously in India and stuff like that. Every time I get a chance to speak, and if you've ever heard me speak, which you have, I'm like passionate and very conversational and very like no fourth wall type of deal. And, it's not like that anywhere else. So in a lot of other countries, they're very academic, like super academic, like everything's a dissertation, everything's about, regulatory, or it's about the equipment. It's very much environmental talk. So you're like thinking of like a college lecture. So when I go over there and I say, hey guys, can you please remove the furniture from the stage and give me a lapel mic? They're just like, whoa, what's going on? So it's kind of an interesting time when I bring in that kind of energy, and everybody really gets into it. And they're just like, I don't know how you can speak like that. And it's just like, man, here in the States, like, you have to speak like that. Like, that's what people do in order to, be able to engage people. And it's so different over there.
Yeah, we're so distracted. We're always vying for attention. But even before that, like, magnanimous people with great personalities and can deliver and communicate effectively are usually the ones that are gonna be the ones on stage, right? I mean, even all of the, whether they're self-proclaimed gurus or they're actual influential people, in spaces, motivational speakers, etc. They've got to have. It's not just data. That's a very interesting point. What kind of differences are there in those other like countries in regards to what you're trying to do, and what was your takeaways?
Okay, so it is very different. It's been something I've had to learn to navigate culturally, looking at how they do trade shows or different things as far as how they do presentations, of course, but then of course their industry, like, what does contracting look like and some of this. So I've been to the United Kingdom, Europe, India, and the Caribbean. So that's where I did most of my travel, in countries in those regions, and learning about how their industry, what it's centered upon. So like, when I did a lot of work in Mexico, a lot of it's centered upon commercial. They're very profitable companies in commercial there, which is, that there's profitable commercial companies here in the US, but there's a lot more profit in residential because people can get paid the same day. There's a lot more popularity around it. Where in India, and even in like Mexico, very similarly, like residential HVAC, it's a lot of one truck chucks. It's a lot of small businesses because it's very hard for them to enterprise a bigger business. And which is really funny for the UK, what I've also learned too, is like, there's similar things like that too, where there's outfits that are contractors and have technicians and stuff like that. But like, the thing is they get a lot of their leads. They don't do marketing like we do here. Blame capitalism, whatever you want to call it. But like, there's just a different way of going to business, and they do a lot of handshake referrals and stuff like that, but they depend on their distributor and their manufacturer to distribute leads to them. So it's a very different business model, where here we would have to, it was like kind of like when I went to New York this summer and I saw how many garbage companies did so many branding, like so many garbage truck companies. And if you've ever been to New York City, they have big brands just like we do for HVAC companies, because people choose who they want to do their garbage pickup. It's not like it's a city, thing. It's all privatized. And so very much here, where in companies in other regions, like, they don't really do like the big brand business. They don't really have that type of scale. So it's hit or miss, but it's not the same business model as it is here in the States. And another thing is because a lot of the regulatory, a lot of the academic changes, a lot of the things that we get as far as what's coming down the pipeline for us, as far as changes and stuff like that, we get from Europe a lot of the times. And so it's the big academic minds out there, the scientists, the engineers and stuff like that, that put all that stuff together, and they do huge shows and summits where they get together and they talk about it and stuff. And they fully realize that none of this means anything if they cannot inspire people in the fields, the technicians, the people on the tools, as they say, if they can't inspire them to also incorporate those changes. And yet they have a very look down your nose type of approach and fully realize that most of these people in the field make more money than they do. But it's a big disconnect. Where in the States, we've done a lot to do best practice groups. And in the last 5-6 years, we've done a lot to celebrate the tech. If you think about it, we've done a lot to realize that we have a labor shortage, we have an optics problem, and that we might not be perfect, but we definitely have a healthy respect for knowing that we need technicians, and technicians is a very lucrative job. And we have best practice groups that get together and celebrate those contractor level importance. So anyway, I don't know if that made any sense, but that's kind of a backwards approach. If you think about, the U.S. has a lot of different things that we're not great at, but there's a lot of things we do get that we're light years ahead.
Well, that really opened up like a couple of thoughts. So am I wrong in saying, or is there a heavy presence of, maybe in the UK there might be, I'm guessing not in Caribbean countries or Mexico, but is there a large union presence? Is a lot of these jobs government jobs?
So in the UK and some of like older European countries and stuff like that, it's guilds, which is where kind of unions came from, right? So there is some level of that. And so they kind of shepherd those type of relationships, or gatekeep, if I can be very clear. But this is speaking in generalizations. It's not that way everywhere, but in a large amounts of areas, it is, like you said, unions or guilds is what it was. Because if you think about way back in the day, they had guilds for different trades. And so they still have some of those today.
And are those guilds, like if a homeowner called a service company, is there a chance that it's like a I don't know, are there government contracts set up in geographical areas? Is it like, are they private companies, but it was a guy that was in the guild, so it's really run sort of like a commercial
job, kind of, as far as so like I said, we're talking in generalizations because there's a lot of countries you're going through. But for instance, in the UK, we were just talking about it, like it's very, like there's not huge enterprise companies for residential like there are here. And a lot of them depend really on their distributor, even though they might have a union or a guild they belong to, they depend on them for contracts for commercial things, but then also like safeguarding them for like we talk about representation as a state level or as a nation level for different kind of code changes and stuff. That would be what they would use their unions for. And of course, things like best practices, as far as trading stories with other contractors.
Yeah. So and you know what, America in here, and I've worked in a couple different states, and there is a level where the distributors and the manufacturers were gatekeepers of all the opportunity, to a point that even still today, where the manufacturer is putting the logo of their brand on
the equipment.
On the vans. Going back even when I started in this industry, all of the vans in a fleet would have.
Well, you still have it, right? For big companies like JCI and stuff like that, like they just have straight technicians that work for them. And
no, I'm talking about private companies that have the logo to the manufacturer that they represent all the time. And you still see it. And you still see it. And I've talked to both distributors and manufacturers, and I've also talked to contractors about this topic, where there used to be this complete and entire gatekeep of the manufacturers, a lot of the branding and all of the recognition. So when people called, like, you think about it, like, that famous, maybe you do, maybe you don't, but there's like a famous locker room speech that Jim Mora for the Colts did. And if you're in the playoffs, like that speech, if you look behind him, it was the Carrier logo, Carrier sponsored, all that. You see way less and less of that now. And you see a lot of contractors who say, the brand's like secondary. I don't even like what percentage.
I'm a firm believer in that. There's no such thing as brand love to the manufacturers unless you're a contractor. But for homeowners are going to put in whatever I tell them I'm to put in.
But I'll tell you, like my parents' generation age, like the first thing a lot of times what they'll say is, did you get a Carrier? Oh, did you get a Lennox? Like they'll say though, there's less of it now, but it was very, very prominent with coming up. They did have a lot of that. In fact, even I talked to Ken Goodrich like a couple of weeks ago. I dropped it last week. I spoke to him a few weeks ago, but the episode was, he talked about Gettle, the brand name Gettle, the brand name of the manufacturer Gettle, having a great brand presence for it. And then, now he was lucky. He got the name of the manufacturer and then, turn that into, I wouldn't say it's luck. He's a pretty smart guy. So, but it's interesting how the tables have turned, but yet in other countries, what you're saying is that like these small contractors are going to the distributors that are going to the what's represented by the
different though too, right? So one thing you didn't take for account though, especially in like Mexico or the Caribbean or anything like that, is that what we don't have here in prominence. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. I'm just saying it's not as big of a deal because of the chokehold that Daikin and Lennox, and because they're centrally here, and how much brand is so important to us in the States. They have China eating their lunch with nameless, and of course we're not as big and ductless as the other countries are. Like every other country is all ductless. That's it.
Yeah. There's a lot of ductless.
That means that you have countries like China and Japan, Taiwan, everything like that have all different brands and even nameless brands and one-off brands that are coming in and they can undercut because they can make them ridiculously cheap and they don't have to worry about a Mitsubishi brand or a Daikin brand or a Lennox brand or anything like that. And so it's really hard because there's no such thing as brand loyalty necessarily unless the manufacturer or the distributor, in some cases if they even do a distribution model, are working their tail off to earn that brand loyalty. In the States, it's very much like, who do you have as your manufacturer? What are you getting co-op for? They still means your brand's important, but you still want those relationships because that's a huge part of your business is your relationship with your distributor or your manufacturer.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think about these other countries and I think about almost like going backwards in time, because probably a lot of I'm imagining a lot of the countries that, you're visiting, right? They haven't really it's still very much a trade. Like you said, it's still very much like there's the business aspect of it. It seems like it's not really present. And I would imagine
kind of like where most of the US was in the 90s.
Right. 80s. And now they're going to all figure it out because, money runs uphill. So, yeah. So, okay. So in regards to that, you did some speaking there, and what else? I mean, are you actively creating like planting, like,
we're trying to. So I think that's the best way to look at it as a model, right? So like for INWIC, it was like, hey, how do you boil the ocean? It's the entire freaking world. The US, we take for granted, like Women HVACR is a 24-year-old group or 22-year-old group. Sorry, I'm getting it confused with other things. 22-year-old group. And it's been around quite a while. Like Ruth King started it in 2002. And being able to have that kind of those roots in it built up slowly over time, but it's always been recognizable. And we have a lot of that. And so like Women HVACR also encouraged the formation of Women HVACR Canada. They're working on Women HVAC group in Mexico. And then like the formation of dozens of women's groups in addition to Women in HVAC all over the US. And so it's just kind of like you see success of one, it really did inspire the creation of lots of others. Now, where we are for women in the trades now, have we ever arrived at anything? There's no such thing, right? Like we haven't arrived at any destination. One day I hope that there won't be the need for women's groups in the trades. That's my goal. But right now, what the trades level faces in the field is very different than what women face in, business, corporate, or whatever like that. So there's two different things. We probably have, from the Department of Labor statistics, is probably more like 6% women in the field And it's more like 25, 27% in the actual like business level. Like you're talking about marketing, executives, C-suites, that type of stuff. Very different. Now, we don't have to fight against things like religion or culture as much as other countries like Africa, India, even Mexico to an extent. Like where it's such a much bigger barrier, if you will, that they're fighting against to even be considered for these jobs. So there's a whole lot of work to do, but it's more like a grassroots roots movement thing where INWIC takes successful organizations from all over the world that do this, like Women HVACR, Women in ASHRAE, other groups like that too. It takes the blueprint of what they have done successfully to build women's groups in their nations and basically equips women in those countries that want to start it and gives them the blueprint so they can skip the learning curve, tools, resources, be able to start their own organizations. Because there's nothing we can do outside of the country. And even like, it would be arrogant to think that we could. It has to be inside each country to be able to have those groups start. You need people on the ground. You need to be able to address them at their needs, not what we assume their needs are. So we can do the best we can by just even encouraging them, showing blueprint, that kind of stuff. So that's what we really do is we strive to do that as we go into different places. Just even being at their children to show this last year and having INWIC there for the first time and showing a banner. There's so many women like, I didn't even know there was a women's group to belong to. So yeah, it's stuff like that.
So what if you don't, because obviously there's an expense involved here. So, are there specific sponsors that are involved in this?
I'm trying. So we're going to get real on this call. I don't know who's watching, but we'll see if I get in trouble or not. So,
well, it's not really who's, I didn't think the later I go on the live stream, the more people are in there, but what I've realized is that it's not really who's on here right now. It's cool to get people involved in the chat, and sometimes it's pretty good. Otherwise, we're really just having a conversation. Then people come in and pop in and yeah, but yeah, I'd love to hear about.
It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, I'd love to hear about the sponsorships that you guys have.
So
what you're working on.
It's hard, right? So INWIC, International Network of Women in Cooling, is made up of like 14 partners of different organizations all over the world. At 13 actually. So, and like women, like ASHRAE is a partner, Women HVACR is a partner. Like we have U3 ARC out of Africa, ERA out of Australia, JESRE out of Japan, ISHRAE out of India. Like there's more. So like there's all different groups that make up this group and this initiative, but it's an initiative. So that being said, it has a board and it has, president-elect and all these different roles. And we have board meetings every other month. And the thing is it is a joint effort between World Refrigeration Day and UNEP, which is basically United Nations Environmental Programs. And because of the UN affiliation, you cannot get sponsorship or private sector funding because of the basically because of the political implications and that type of stuff. So it's really kind of hard. Look at Church.
Yeah, Church is saying spill the tea. So the organization is actually sponsored by the United Nations.
Well, it's all the partners. So it's all the partners putting it together. But yes, we do get like what's called an allowance that we have to go through an SSFA and we have to say what we're needing. So basically at the moment, I'm running a worldwide organization with a team of other organizations on a budget of like 30K. Like it's not that much.
And it seems like that's just paying for your travel at this point.
No. So the travel, it's crazy. So everybody's trying to understand this because I don't get paid to go, but I do get my travel reimbursed. So based on where I'm going and stuff like that, basic other partner organizations and stuff will sponsor travel and say, okay, we'll cover your flight and we'll cover your hotel for these times. And not gonna lie, I added on extra days in certain places just so I could experience being overseas, like being in those countries.
You were in India. You were in India. Like, I mean, that's not a short. I mean,
no, it was an 18-hour flight. It was 13 hours to Dubai, 5 hours from Dubai. It was pretty crazy, but I used my own Amex points to upgrade myself to business class, it ruined me for flying forever. Really, it did.
Oh yeah, you can't do that.
But yeah, so as far as funding, my goal is to eventually get it so that INWIC can do its own privatized funding and figure out as far as a model for that. We'll see what happens. Like, we have a really awesome team of individuals. Like, I'm looking forward to seeing a lot of them at the winter conference and AHR in February, because that's when a lot of them come over. So I usually have a dinner where we usually discuss different plans for that. We have a lot of great partners, but it is really hard because the bonus is having UNEP involved is awesome, because of course UNEP has a lot of pull, a lot of press, a lot of really good connections. It's great, but it also is a ball and chain with the fact that it really does limit you and what you can do in funding, and you can't make things move without money. And I know that firsthand from even helping, grow up in the women HVACR stuff and what we've done over that. When I started, it was roughly just about 10K in 2015 that we were doing in revenue, that we had. And I think by the end of it, we were doing close to $1 million by the time I left. It was just like $1 million. Now they're doing, they do so much now with how they're able to give, what they're able to do, how many lives they touch, being able to put on events. I'd love to see that for NWIC someday.
And you 9 years, huh? So okay. So there's because it's government affiliated. Is there?
You can't say. Government. It's okay. Just say.
Okay, so it's unit affiliated, but are there other than that? Are there other stipulations or like contingencies like that you're not allowed to do because it's government? Sorry, not government. Okay,
really
regulate. Well, it's really interesting. I'm really interested.
Okay, well, because UN does have political affiliations and governmental affiliations. Of course, the main part of UNEP is, of course, everything involving the Montreal Protocol. So everything they do has to be a part of the Montreal Protocol. And one of the objectives of the Montreal Protocol was gender. So, of course, NWIC was their answer to be part of that initiative to address gender for struggling nations that were not addressing gender. So as far as there's a lot of different countries out there that don't even consider gender as an issue in their RACHP industry. We call it HVAC. It's very much RACHP over there. So
RACHP?
Refrigeration AC heat pump.
Oh, okay.
It was really hard for me to be speaking publicly. I'd be saying, the HVAC industry. I'd be like, the RACHP industry.
RACHP.
Additionally to that, they separate things there. So I say HVAC, it's not really the same thing. But another thing that's really crazy about it is it's all different. They treat heating and cooling and refrigeration as two separate entities where we kind of lump them all together.
Well, do they have split systems? They have to have split systems there, right? Where they have furnace area. Yeah, but they treat it as different industry. But you wouldn't call it
because refrigeration, it's more like commercial refrigeration, and cooling is very much its own. The show I just got back from was Chillventa in Nuremberg, Germany. That one is very much all about the cold chain. It's going to talk about refrigeration. It's talking about cooling, all those kind of products. And then next year in March is ISH, which is in Frankfurt. And that's very much more of the heating end of it and heating and cooling type of deal. So they really do separate them pretty heavily.
Interesting. It's fascinating to me. So in now your travels in these other countries, seeing how other people live, seeing all this other stuff here, what's kind of, what are your key takeaways? What are your thoughts actually on, we've talked a little bit about the differences, but what's your kind of key takeaways from being in those places now?
Part of it was there's a lot of different cultures and stuff like that I got to encounter, and I loved all of them. I learned a lot more about public speaking, as far as I've got to perfect my own craft in that, and get a lot of experience. Learning culturally to keep my mouth shut sometimes. Holy cow! I was at a very big formal dinner in India, and I'll share the story. I think I already shared it with Trish and Julie. We'll see. But basically, I was just talking. You have to be aware of your surroundings and where you're at, and what things are appropriate, what are not. So I was at this big dinner, and it was 14 people. It was a big formal dinner, and it was over there because we were treated like distinguished guests. My whole time in Calcutta, I was very much shielded from all of the crazy around there. And I got to get into the city very few times, but we had a host there that treated us like royalty. He spoiled us rotten. We had dinners, we had a driver everywhere. We were at the JW Marriott the entire time. So I was very much there, but not really in India, if you will. And so when we went out to this dinner, I was talking to some other people at the table and stuff. And there was some Indian men and women, and there was some other people from the UNEP. And we're talking about, one of them has talked about how changing the guard at their company has been, crazy because they have a new leadership and it's been something like 20 years since the leadership changed. And she was just talking about it. I was like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. Because when like new leaders take over, it's nuts because everybody has to kill all the sacred cows. And unfortunately, saying if you've heard that terminology, like you said, making the sausage, like when you say kill the sacred cows, it's like anytime a new leadership takes place or a new corporate, CEO takes place, they have to like kill all the last things from the last person to make their mark. And it's like a really big deal. So it's the expression, kill the sacred cows. And so of course, if you think of India,
like, is this, you're talking about when new leaders come into like governmental roles, not when new leaders go into a company?
No, like a company too.
So does each company have their own cows that they
It's
slaughter?
not literal, it's figurative. The figure of speech in
You made it seem like there was a ceremonial. I thought there was a ceremonial slaughtering of the cows. This shows you how stupid I am.
But like I'm in India, and so they don't kill cows in India. It's a big deal. So that's why it's called.
Oh my God! Of course. So this is what I thought, because I knew that the cows were sacred in Indian culture and Hindi culture.
So I'm not all of India, but yes.
Well, yeah, but so I thought that's what I thought. I thought, oh wow, maybe I didn't realize that.
Oh no, my figure of speech went over like a lead balloon. Like it was very much.
That's so crazy. And I'd never heard that expression before, so you'll have to forgive me. I never heard that expression before. So that's crazy. So you said that at a dinner?
I did in India. And like the delegate from, she was from the Bangkok office. She was next to me and she was like, perhaps not saying that in India.
Wow.
You probably wouldn't want to do that. And I was just mortified. I mean, it wasn't like I caused a war or anything like that, but there was a level of, oh my gosh, the crazy American. You know what I mean? Like there were some things, and like I'm used to saying things on stage when I give my speeches. I talk about you don't ever want to burn a bridge. This industry is very tight. It's a very incestuous industry. Well, saying things like incestuous in India was very much a thing that they were like, well, okay, the crazy American can get away with saying that, but it was very taboo in other conversations. Yeah, little nuances. So I say that makes an impact when you're trying to think about that. I try to listen a lot more. Language has not been a barrier. I have learned so much basic languages like hello and stuff like that. I've got that, but there's cultural things like that you pick up on how you do greetings, on how you walk into places, and like water bottles are super taboo. Like they know you're an American when you're having like a plastic water bottle. And of course, I'm not going to get anything in the water. So I am using plastic water bottles. But if you're taking pictures, like they do not want you to hold them. Like it's not considered sustainable. It's considered taboo. It's very much like we don't want them in pictures. So like how we worship plastic water. Like,
can you buy them in stores there?
You can, because it's kind of an unavoidable thing for like, they can make a lot of money off of them. Especially because tourists have to be there and they don't have the same antibodies as other, like if they're not drinking the local water. But like when you're at events, they don't like picturing them there, especially in like heating and cooling, because it's not part of that green energy thing either. It's not being very green. But then the other thing is language. Language was not much of a barrier. Everybody asked me that, but there's so much AI. I have that headphones that translate for you, like while you're wearing them. Those are pretty awesome. I will say my favorite place to use those is the nail salon so far. But then other places like where you can kind of pick up on stuff. Plus, any of my presentations AI will automatically do subtitles in a different language. I can.
So how are you So then how are you communicating? Like, I get that it's interpreting in your ear, but how do you communicate back?
Honestly, 90% of the people I deal with all speak English. So it's really kind of like no-brainer. It's kind of a deal.
That's what I thought.
I do have a translator. When I went into India, I had one of the panelists with me, and she was such a sweetheart. We went to some of the religious art installations around the city for their festival there. And it was really cool, but I was not prepared for the amount of people that I was going to be in with. And I stuck out like a sore thumb being blonde and like, tall. And so there were people like running up to me and touching my feet and begging and stuff like that. And she spoke fluent Hindi and was very much able to like help me navigate that. So there are situations, wow. Like when I'm doing my presentations from stage or when I'm actually doing phone calls and stuff like that, it's a non-issue. When I'm in there, I usually have a friend or somebody that speaks it fluently, and it makes it a lot easier. I've only been in a couple situations, but of course you use Google Translate and stuff like that too, and I can speak into it or, whatever.
Was that the weirdest thing that you encountered? Was the weirdest thing People begging at your feet, like touching your feet. Was that the weirdest thing?
In India, I mean, you kind of see it in movies, right? So you're just kind of like, but when it happens to you, you're just kind of like not really sure and you don't want to offend anybody.
It's like
I think
weird.
that's the other thing was just kind of walking like if I was in New York and I had somebody come up to me and I'd be like, all right, brush them off and keep going and just ignore them, right? And it's like, well, is that the same response you have in India? Or is that because we're at these like they're pedals.
American homeless are more self-conscious about they don't want. I'm sure that'd be a surefire way to get more money, right? They just beg at somebody's feet, right?
Also, I mean, Kolkata has all sorts. Like they have a middle class, they have an upper class, they have a lower class. You really can't tell sometimes too. So it wasn't like I didn't want to assume, but then my friend would explain to me, what we were doing and like who they were and what they were asking for, that type of thing, and then say shoe and all that kind of stuff. So that was awkward, but like it wasn't. It was just kind of like
So is it true? My buddy actually, did you drive it all there? You had to, right, from the airport to.
Oh my God!
My buddy said that because he worked in the IT world, and he said that there was like if there was a 5-lane highway, there were like no lanes. It didn't matter. The vehicles.
They don't have lanes. They don't have turn
everywhere.
Signals,
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's scooters I have some of the videos I posted because that was the first thing. We always had drivers everywhere we went. So we always had drivers. We always had somebody taking us somewhere. And even some of the people that live there, they don't drive. Like they'll have a driver. And the cars there never are like they never are clean or like brand new because they always have scratches or dents or anything because it's nuts. It's people whoever needs to be the most aggressive. I thought Mexico City was the scariest thing I'd seen for driving. India was nuts. It was all people. Like if there was like 2 feet of space between a car, you'd bet there was a scooter going through it, and everybody kind of like butts in, and there's really no like they have stoplights, but they're kind of suggestions. But the horn, if your car does not have a horn, you cannot drive.
So you have to have a horn as the law. The one law, it doesn't matter if you have 5 people
it's
on
kind of the unwritten law
Vespa.
Like you need it. Because if you don't have a horn, you're just dead. Like people won't know you're coming. Because that's the thing is where like people ahead of you normally would have the right. It's people behind you making the horn noises to let you know somebody's coming up behind you really, really fast. And then you have to like watch your back. It's nuts. Like you said, 5-lane highway. That means that there's going to be 8 cars across.
I wonder if they actually do. They have like driver's licenses there?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, they do. You actually have to pass a test.
Well, I for the cars, I imagine, but for scooters, probably not.
So my buddy said that there were like the family of like 4 on a scooter.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I saw that in the tuk-tuks too. Are they called tuk-tuks? Yeah, the little things, and a lot of people with like the bikes and everything like that too. Everywhere. It was nuts. Colors everywhere. Everything is so colorful. It's gorgeous. Like advertising everywhere. So one thing about India too, and like just my brief experience was like just the amount of advertising. It's like Times Square everywhere. Like it doesn't matter if the buildings are being built or the buildings are falling apart. There's advertising on it everywhere. Like I put a post on Facebook about this a couple minutes ago because I took pictures of it. But it's so colorful and so crazy. All the sheer amount of advertising that everywhere. So if there's a square inch available, there's a billboard.
I heard also in some of the major cities, like there's like just like hovels, just like miles of hovels. Like my buddy, I think he was in Mumbai. And he said it was like there'd be like a beautiful skyscraper with like all of the technology in the world, and then directly next door. The
nicest hotel I've ever stayed in ever, it was in India. It was the JW Marriott in Kolkata, and it was the nicest hotel I've been in to date. And I'm usually at 100 nights a year at Marriott. So like I've been a lot of different ones, and that for sure was the fanciest.
And then right next door, there's like a vacant lot with like people living in the lot with like cows. Yeah. Yep. Like
same,
livestock.
Or people washing their clothing and stuff like that in the river next to it, and like vacant lots or like stray dogs. Like that was hard. I had friends telling me like when it came to the stray dogs and cats everywhere, there was a lot, and you just have to treat them like pigeons in New York. Like you just kind of have to ignore them because they're just everywhere. It's really sad.
I think that's what a lot of cities in America would have been like, where like there was really big initiatives back, if you remember, I don't know, when I was a kid anyway, when like, they had like a lot of ads, like you had Bob Barker talking about make sure to spay and neuter your pets. You remember that?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, it's very interesting. We've had these different initiatives throughout the course of our lives, just about like cleaning up cities. And now maybe a lot of cities, they were going the opposite direction. But so you mentioned before about, so obviously I love this conversation. So you mentioned before you travel a lot, you talk to a lot of people with your volunteer work and with your being president of a women's organization, but you also said that you run a marketing company, and now I was trying to figure out, so you help businesses implement AI, but like for dummies. Is that right?
Well, so I wouldn't say implement yet, because remember, a lot of the contractors are just getting used to it being, because every time I have to plan my year, and I work with a lot of distributors and a lot of different partners, a lot of different state and level organizations. And one of the things they're always looking for is what they need to bring to their audience, right? And so easily the topic of the last 2-3 years has been AI. And so like my big thing is like, I want to be able to have my hands on all the time. I am not an expert, that is for sure. It always changes all the time. And I'm struggling to keep up with my own schedule. And I have to keep, online access on the forefront, but I also have to keep my contractors informed. And so that being said, I did a lot of different topics of just introducing AI, introducing ChatGPT, introducing the terminology, the ethics, the legality, products that are going to change HVAC business as we know it. And so making that digestible for contractors who are, in some cases, 50, 60, 70-year-old men or women that have been in the trades a long time and are just now like, and if they're anything like my father, who they're just like, just one more thing. I mean, they've already spent their time, digging through the internet change, for our industry. When the internet was introduced, if you think about when people were starting websites, when people were getting into social media and like the next thing and the next. And now it's like AI, it's just crazy. So that's one of the things that I kind of, like I told you, I think it's kind of like a missionary thing, but I have a 60-slide presentation, which is pretty thorough, but it's something to kind of introduce that. And my biggest advice to any of the contractors I work with or the ones I've spoken to is, you just have to start somewhere, because the more you put it off and you put it off and you put it off and you say, okay, I'm going to have somebody do it, or I'm going to hire somebody to do it, whatever that is. Like, you're just like, oh, I'll get to AI eventually, is the harder it's going to keep, the deeper it's going to get. And if you just get a handle on it now, or just, keep tabs on it, or start playing around with ChatGPT, or just download an app, or start using things, or have somebody in your office in charge of it, that's going to be a lot easier to navigate down the road, because it's going to pass you by. And it's not going anywhere, and it's going to have your business left in the dust if you're not willing to adapt. So that's the big thing.
I agree with that. I loved your approach. Like, let's like small cuts, right? Let's get you one cut at a time. Julie Blissett says you're humble, by the way. Obviously, Colleen is a trailblazer for helping bring the technology into the trades. Yes. But I like that approach, right? Because I mean, I feel like that in a way. I'm like, I use ChatGPT, or, I'm kind of like, AI to me seems like it's sort of in its toddler stage right now. And I'm like, this is not a nice, I think this toddler needs to be in a timeout for a little bit before
it might be in the terrible threes, who knows?
Yeah.
But I can see that. I just think like there are some companies that I've met out there who, and it usually is because they have a younger leadership that is just embracing it and like, we are going full throttle. And there's some guys I've met that like they leave their business because they become AI junkies and they want to do everything AI, and now they're full consultants on it. So I mean, like, some people are taking it by the horns and being like, eat, live, sleep, breathe, everything AI. And some people are just getting their foot, their toes in the water, and they're just kind of like trying to take it bit by bit. So, and
what's the end result for you and your, sorry to interrupt you. What's your end result for your marketing company then? Like how does this, how are you using it to help fuel your customers?
So right now we have just the basics. I have partnered with a lot of different companies. We're looking at a couple different ones that we have for our clients, because sometimes it's either we invent the wheel or we have to reinvent the wheel. And I actually like my partnerships more than some of the stuff we have to build. So That's just me. Like, depends on what it is. Sometimes I think that like, we're building stuff here at Online Access. We have about 500 some odd customers all over the US and Canada. And they range from the small guys, the 500,000s or less, all the way up to like, the 15 mils or more, like kind of thing like that. So we have a mix. And I will say the majority is those guys that are in that, under 5 million range. And so the stuff I have to think has to be able to feed everybody. And there's some people that have the ability to have in-house expertise, because some of the stuff as a marketing company that I can do is like, I can help with Google review answering and being able to write good content and show you how to use these tools and like not have to rely on AI for that, or, how to use AI in search, or how to do A/B testing to see what search performance is for SEO, and showing you AI tools that can work with that, or how we have started adapting to AI tools that can show us how website performance can be increased just by doing that, and kind of using a lot of that technology to help us internally. Externally, there are a lot of tools that a contractor needs that don't involve their marketing company. It involves a lot of their CRM stuff, their outreach, and you need a person in office to do some of that to implement. And so if we can help in any way that's kind of something we like to do. But as far as offering those services, that's what we're trying to look at. Like, where's everybody's need going to be met? And it's a kind of a convoluted answer as far as we use a lot of internal AI tools to help improve or enhance what we're doing and to be able to be more effective and be kind of ahead of the curve and be able to have the conversation about where AI is going in search, especially for websites, where it's going for AI web design, that type of stuff. But as far as for our clients, besides review answering and stuff like that, it's just trying to get them to know where to start. Maybe someday, and that's what we're trying to look at, might be having more tools for that. But we have a lot of really good partners that we use for call handling, things we recommend for coaching, things we recommend for dispatch, that type of stuff.
So that's not really, those are very useful tools, but what you're talking about is a lot more resourceful than a marketing company, obviously, because you and your husband have run businesses before.
So my husband works for Johnstone. So he is a branch manager. Okay. So my dad and I have the Online Access company, and so my uncle has the HVAC and plumbing company. So a very happy family.
But marketing companies, yeah, sure, they can act as a resource, but you're talking about real resourceful stuff. So, what's the biggest thing that you do right now for most of your clients? What's your biggest
search engine optimization? A lot of it, as far as like search engine optimization being the huge one. Social media. We do community engagement strategies. That's a big one. I think people leave by the wayside. They think that digital is the entire answer to all their problems. And I can tell you that you need to be working on your actual boots on the ground, top of mind awareness and fencing in your herd and working with your community and becoming that household name. And that's what gets you found on search. You can get found on that first page, but nobody's clicking on you if they don't know who you are.
The branding's huge. I have a theory, by the way, that direct mail the people that will leverage direct mail, because everybody's going digital, are going to tap into a market of old people with money. I'm telling you right now, okay, I worked for a company that had a very elderly population as their clientele. They had lots of money. They always needed service companies. Yeah. And guess what? Those people still look at their mail. They don't throw everything out. I don't
think direct mail is done. I just think we do it poorly. So a lot of the clients I work with, they'll buy a list, and then they'll just put it out into the Ethernet or basically in the universe, and they'll case a neighborhood that they rarely spend time in, because they'll target based on this is a really popular neighborhood with a lot of rich people in it, and I really like it. This is where I really want to be, but it's 6 miles away or 7 miles away from my office. And you're like, okay, well, guess what? Where you do your mailings, I think this is one of the things I teach all the time, is there's a difference between your market area and your service area. Most contractors, where their address is, and they draw a circle around it, and they say, okay, this 50-mile radius or this 30-mile radius around my office, every driveway is my customer. Well, yeah, until you have to do your first hour and a half service call back, and then now you don't have any type of efficiency. You're doing more windshield time than you're actually doing in business. And so that's where you're getting into, if you actually look at your numbers and see where you have the most presence, it's really easy, because you can tell at the couple zip codes around you that you have the most impact, where people recognize you. They see your trucks every day. They see your yard signs. You have raving fans. There's referrals. And so when you mail to those neighborhoods and when you put billboards out in those neighborhoods, they work, because people know who you are. You're the brand. It's not some stranger.
So as we sort of, we got about maybe we'll do a little more here, like maybe another 8-9 minutes. Let me ask you a question. What you work with a lot of contractors, you worked in a lot of organizations. What's one, and I ask this on every episode, and I can't wait to do a clip all these. What is one professional experience you've had? Could be a customer. It would be great if it's a customer. That has been so impactful that it lives with you wherever you go.
I've had a couple, but I've never talked about this one on a podcast before. And
if you feel comfortable about it, you
You
don't have to say names. You don't have to say names. But yeah, I'd love to hear the specifics of it.
I just meant that I've never been asked the question. So like on other ones, that's kind of a go-to. But so in 2020, this was just a bunch of different things. It's like when you kind of know how you impact people. And I guess that's like where everybody gets a dose of imposter syndrome, where they get to say, okay, you don't really know where you've impacted somebody. And I got really blessed with the opportunity to have kind of a diary of that now, because what happened during 2020 is that obviously during the pandemic, everything shut down. There was a lot of virtual conferences. Holy cow, were we doing virtual conferences? And that year, I was named Service Nation's Woman of the Year. And it was the first time a vendor had ever been chosen as Woman of the Year for Service Nation, which was crazy because it's all been contractors, some great ladies that, I've worked with for years. And so I was not expecting it. In fact, I had spoken for the Service World Expo on a virtual conference the day before. And then me, my husband, some of my coworkers and stuff like that, we left. We were going stir crazy. We were heading right down to the Keys. And so I was at an airport in Chicago. I know exact gate because I see it all the time. And I was at B9 in the Chicago Midway Airport. And because I had only known that I needed to watch or tune into the conference because Matt Michelle had brought a comment on my Facebook saying, you better tune in tomorrow. And I was like, I'm not even going to be in town. But so we pulled my laptop out, we watched at the gate, and suddenly they announced that I had gotten Women of the Year. And I was like flabbergasted. It was crazy. My phone started blowing up like nuts. I kept getting like all these text messages and stuff. Now, for me, the difference is, I guess, the point of this story, and it wasn't just a brag or anything like that. It was just that because it was 2020, everybody's like, oh, you didn't really get to do your stage time or anything like that. Like I got to eventually later on to a conference because usually they announce those at Service World Expo. But because it was 2020 and because everybody was at home watching and we were just so desperate to see each other because it's like one big HVAC family, I got so many different text messages, which were very meaningful because it wasn't just like a hug and a handshake and a picture. It was written down feelings that I get to, see. But then I had to board the plane. So I was on a 2-hour flight and I didn't get to have any cell service during that time. And so I landed in Florida and we landed in Fort Lauderdale and we drove down to the Keys. And so I spent that entire 2.5-hour drive down to Key West, like going through like Facebook posts and stuff like that. And it was just, I get emotional talking about it, but that for me, I have a Facebook post that comes up on my feed every September around that time. And it has all those comments, and it's kind of my pick-me-up, if you will. So it's that why you do what you do. And it has it's the impact.
Emotional.
Yeah. Look at me.
Can you pinpoint something a reason why you think, is there a specific, something specific that you did that year that you think triggered, or was it a culmination of things?
It was a culmination of things. I didn't think of one thing specifically other than like, I don't know. We had launched CertiClear. We had done a couple of different things for the industry as far as, being able to do stuff for COVID, but nothing that a lot of other companies weren't doing, a lot of other people. But I think it's just a culmination of stuff over the years. But it was just kind of nice. That to me was kind of cool. It was a unique thing that happened because of the pandemic, because usually when that award happens, people don't have the opportunity to have that type of, I don't know, written down affirmation or even those comments kind of thing like that. And so I kind of have a written record now, which is kind of nice to look at. And because everybody gets down, you always get into like, okay, why am I doing this? Here's why. Here's the people that you impact. Here's the people that you enjoy seeing. This industry really is a family. And it's very, very large, but it's very, very small at the same time. And I've always kind of had the motto that you work until you no longer have to introduce yourself. So
You said there was a couple of things that maybe came to mind, but do you have anything else you want to share?
Well, I am looking forward to listening to this later. I'm sure, like, it's always one of those things when you're talking in broad spectrum, you're like, oh, I don't know who listens to this kind of stuff. But like talking about, it's the most I've talked about the INWIC stuff in a while. So it'll be interesting. I really think that if anybody's interested in learning more about INWIC, you can go to inwic.org, and it's free. Membership's free. We need allies and stuff. You can keep up to date with our newsletter. Find out what's going on. You can share it. We are sharing stories about women in other countries and what they're doing in the trades. So it's kind of a neat thing to keep a pulse on. Always looking for support for that. And as far as, anything I'd have to share other than that, I don't know. I've really kind of enjoyed the conversation so far. I think it might be different than ones you've had.
It's pretty clear you have a distinct passion for this industry and for what you do, and the amount of time that you actually spend not making money doing what you do is like volunteering your time and your life to this, to obviously being the head of these groups and influencing people. And I think when, we look back at, I don't know, in 30 years, 40 years, 50 years from now, and you look back and you say, did I do anything? Am I leaving this planet better than I found it? Did I make an impact? Will my kids and grandkids look at me in a way, or even not my grandkids and kids, and maybe other people, will they look at me in a way that says, hey, that was my grandma, or hey, this was a really important woman in my life. And it sounds to me like Colleen, you're definitely on that road for sure. And I gotta say, I appreciate you. That's pretty cool. I also really did like your information session that I sat through. That was really good. Hey, somebody has a question here before. Hamilton said he wants the website again for the INWIC, and also do me a favor, Colleen. Obviously, you run a marketing company for the trades. Give your information so that everybody can find you.
So it's inwic.org. So it's www.inwic.org. So org. And so that's the international group. And then my everyday job, the one that actually pays me, my other passion, if you will, is online access. And so that's hvacwebsites.com. And so we do websites for contractors, but we also handle a lot of industry organizations. So we do like the Joe Grow Foundation, Women in HVACR's website. We do a lot of different manufacturers, small manufacturers, and a lot of different other companies and software companies. So it's kind of a mixed bag, if you will, but HVAC websites with an S.com. It's all right. But yeah, it's the plural one.
HVAC websites, plural.com. HVAC websites, plural.com. HVAC websites.
And if anybody wants to connect, find me on LinkedIn. Okay. I'm always happy to connect on there too.
LinkedIn, INWIC. And what was the website for INWIC? NINWIC.org.
Yep.
And
perfect.
When I release the audio episode, I'll put that information in there.
So Everett, will I be seeing you at the Tactical Awards in Orlando?
My plan is to be there, so I will definitely. I definitely want to be there. I did get a chance to meet. Obviously, I interviewed Ben Poole. He has about a 15-minute episode on here. I'm going to go down to Austin and actually interview him directly. I really want to spend more time. I really want to spend more time with Ben. And for those of you that don't know who Ben Poole is, he's the creator for HVAC Tactical. Not everybody that listens to this is in the HVAC industry, but HVAC Tactical is an incredible organization. Go to the website, Google it up, and Ben created this. There's really cool gear. Actually, Colleen is wearing their shirt, an HVAC Tactical shirt. Really cool. I'm really excited to go down to Austin and talk to him. And so, Colleen, dude, this has been super awesome. I really enjoyed this conversation. Julie says I got to be there. Yes, it's my plan to be there. I'm really excited about it. So, big shout out to Tersh and Julie for Service Business Mastery podcast. They were hanging out in the chat tonight, and super cool. All right, guys, till next week. One other tiny quick thing, by the way, and maybe many of you have seen my post here. So I've subtly changed the name of my podcast. This podcast was the Sales Tales podcast. So I was in this house. It is now, I've just changed it to So I Was in This House podcast. So, and then the tagline is Service and Sales Tales. So my thing was really, I wanted to capture the essence of what I've been doing here. So I was in this house, and so I've changed all of the names. You can still probably search it and find it anyway. But really appreciate it. The post today, I mean, I couldn't even believe, like, Colleen, like, I'm glad that you're here right now. Like, I look back and I'm like, if you told me that I'd have like 15, 20,000 like streams in 1 year of doing this and had tens and tens of thousands of interactions on social media and everything like that, like, I would have had no idea. I'm so grateful. And I want to thank everybody that, if you listen to this point especially on the audio gets a lot of attention. I didn't want to do video, to be honest with you. But I didn't really want to do video, but everybody's like, no, you got to do video. Everybody wants to see like the conversation happen. And I'm like, why? Just like, anyway, I really do appreciate it. Like, beyond blessed, really want to keep doing this. And I'm really excited about announcing some new news and a business endeavor I'm getting involved in. Colleen, thank you so much.
Thank you, Everett.
Have an amazing night.
You too. Have a great Thanksgiving.
Yes. Happy Thanksgiving, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.